Fire breaks out at Volgograd Lukoil refinery. Kremlin not going to give up its goals in war against Ukraine, and how Russia struck Ukraine's energy sector with missiles and drones. The latest news next. On January 15th, a large fire broke out at an oil refinery in Volgograd, Russia, owned by Lukoil, the media resource Astra reports. At around 4 a.m. local time, a fire erupted at the Lukoil oil refinery in the Krasnoarmeysk city district of Volgograd. Local residents reported hearing an explosion. Emergency services confirmed to Russian media that a fire occurred at the refinery. However, Russian authorities claimed that the fire was caused by internal issues at the facility, not external interference.
The fire started at unit number 18 and 2 heat exchangers. The fire has now been extinguished. There were no casualties as a result of the incident. The exact cause of the fire is being investigated. Still, it is already known that it was due to an internal malfunction and not related to any external influence.
As reported earlier, at the end of 2024, the Lukoil refinery in the Volgograd region likely came under attack. At that time, Russian authorities claimed that air defense systems allegedly shot down 3 drones in the Volgograd region. The regional governor stated that UAV's debris fell on the territory of an industrial facility in the Kotovsky district, where the production unit of Lukoil Volgograd Nefteprerabotka is located. The Russian army has struck again at Ukraine's energy infrastructure with various types of missiles and drones, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to Zelensky, the Russians targeted gas infrastructure and energy facilities that provide for the lives of people in Ukraine.
Over 40 missiles were launched in this attack, including ballistic missiles. At least 30 were destroyed. Additionally, more than 70 Russian attack drones were launched overnight. Thanks to our air defense forces and all involved units, we've managed to maintain the functionality of our energy system.
Zelensky noted that Ukraine constantly needs to strengthen the existing capabilities of its air shield. After all, partners at the NATO summit in Washington and in the Ramstein format made promises that have not yet been fully realized.
We've also discussed licenses for the production of air defense systems and missiles for them, which could serve as one of the effective security guarantees for Ukraine. This is both realistic and necessary to implement.
Critical infrastructure facilities have been hit in 2 districts of the Lviv region as a result of a massive Russian missile attack. Reported by Maxim Kozitsky, head of Lviv Region Military Administration, on Telegram, Svetlana Onyshuk, head of Ivano-Frankivsk Region Military Administration, on Telegram.
While an air raid warning was in effect in the morning from 0612 to 0812, the enemy attacked Lviv Oblast with cruise missiles. 2 critical infrastructure facilities in the Drohobych and Stry districts were hit. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but there was damage.
About details, Kozitsky did not say what exactly the Russians hit. At the same time, he emphasized that the region's life support systems were operating normally and that there would be no power outages. Svetlana Onyshuk, head of Ivano-Frankivsk Region Military Administration, also reported an attack on her area of responsibility.
In the Carpathian region, the Russians targeted critical infrastructure facilities. Air defense forces were operating in the region. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Relevant services are working at the scene. The situation is under control.
Analysts at the Institute for the Study of War have pointed out that Kremlin terrorist Vladimir Putin is not going to make concessions for peace talks and is supporting demands aimed at destroying the Ukrainian state, reported by ISW.
The Kremlin remains committed to achieving the original goals of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in any future peace negotiations, namely the destruction of the Ukrainian state, dissolution of the current Ukrainian government, demilitarization of Ukraine, and a permanent ban on Ukraine's future membership in NATO.
About details, Kremlin advisor and former Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev has rejected any suggestion that Russia might consider handing back occupied territories to Ukraine during future negotiations. In an interview with the Russian daily Komsomolskaya Pravda published on the 14th of January, Patrushev declared that the idea was not even up for discussion. Patrushev falsely claimed that the sham referendums conducted in the occupied territories of Ukraine in September 2022 legitimized Russia's claims to Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. He also suggested that international recognition of Russia's illegal occupation and annexation of these four regions, as well as Crimea, was a non-negotiable precondition for any peace agreement. Patrushev reaffirmed that Russia's objectives in Ukraine remain unchanged and that the Kremlin is committed to achieving all the goals Russian leader terrorist Vladimir Putin stated to justify the full-scale invasion.
Putin identified the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine as the key goals of the full-scale invasion during a speech on 23 February 2022. And these goals amount to the destruction of Ukraine's ability to defend itself and replacement of the legitimate Ukrainian government with a pro-Russian puppet government.
ISW continues to assess that Putin's goals in Ukraine are to break up NATO and seize full control over Ukraine, and that Putin remains committed to these goals, and ISW has not observed any indication that Putin is willing to concede on such goals in future negotiations. About details, Russian officials persist in denying the existence of an independent Ukrainian identity and statehood separate from Russia as part of their continued efforts to justify destruction of the Ukrainian state. At the press conference on the 14th of January, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov referred to the country that is now called Ukraine, seemingly aiming to delegitimize Ukrainian sovereignty and independence. Patrushev also emphasized the so-called fraternal ties between Russia and Ukraine, dismissing the idea that the two nations have distinct cultural and historical identities.
The Kremlin's ongoing information operation, attempting to portray Russians and Ukrainians as one unified nation and culturally and historically homogeneous, is one of its most significant information operations aimed at undermining Western support for Ukraine. Calls for the West to acquiesce to all of Russia's demands in Ukraine require the West to tacitly acknowledge and agree that a Ukrainian identity and state independent from Russia either does not currently exist or does not deserve to exist in the future.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe.